that today's message, if you recall a few weeks ago, I said I started out with a particular message, and then when I got up and started moving about and I went into meditation, I came out of meditation and I heard Spirit say, no, there's another message for you today to deliver, and I did, and I said I didn't know why or who it was for. And so today's message is really what I had intended for those, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. And I know that this morning we're here and we're experiencing some of the inconvenience. And Emma and I went to a funeral yesterday. And the minister who did the eulogy got up and said at the beginning, I'm one of those non-traditional preachers. I'm not going to be up here long. As a matter of fact, if you fall asleep quickly, you blink too fast, I'll be at home. So as he said that, I thought about how the day earlier I was at the Trinity Institute, the Listen for a Change conversations on racial justice, and they played the video of a preacher who said, he asked the question, do you know what the definition of an optimist is? And people just kind of murmured. He said the definition of an optimist is when a preacher says, I won't keep you long, and they believe it. So I said all that to say that yesterday he got up and said, I'm not one of those traditional preachers. I'm not going to keep you long. If you fall asleep by the time you open your eyes again, I'll be at home. And he kept saying, I won't be long. And he kept saying it as I closed, and he kept on. And he did for a long time. But this morning, I'm not going to keep you long. If you saw the subject, walking on water, the thought that I wanted to explore for just a bit this morning is the idea that we oftentimes feel as if reaching our goals, we have a bit of fear that comes when we first set out our goals and we decide to do something. And we think that oftentimes the way to do it and to accomplish it and to get there is to somehow do it in the absence of fear. In the absence of fear. But ultimately the way to make it and to achieve it is that we do it in the presence of fear. We ultimately do it in spite of fear. And many of you are familiar with the story of when the master teacher Jesus was out, his disciples were out in the Sea of Galilee in a boat. And the storms were starting to rock the boat a little bit. And they were getting a little bit concerned because Jesus was back someplace else taking rest for himself. Because one of the things I always notice is that when Jesus would do things that we started calling miracles, he would always take time to get alone and be to himself. And so he was doing that, and after he did that, and the disciples were out on the Sea of Galilee already in the boat, he came walking up on water. And at first they were afraid, they thought it was a ghost, and then they recognized him. And he calls out to them, and Peter says to him, if it's really you, tell me to come out on the water. And Peter then steps out of the boat into the water. And now I'm taking this from a metaphysical standpoint, a metaphysical perspective, because for me, the boat represents our current situation. And Peter represents faith. And Peter steps out of the boat on faith. And as he does, Peter is successful. He's able to walk on water and walk toward the master teacher. Now, it's important, again, that I said that when we set our goals and our direction and what it is that we are looking at, one of the first things we have to do, we have to step out of our current situation, step out of the boat, which is what Peter did. And he was successful in that he started walking on water. So oftentimes when we set our goals and we set our dreams, we set our direction, we set our intention, we are successful as we start out. But then what happened to Peter, as Peter was walking toward Jesus, he got distracted. And the scripture tells us that he looked at the winds, and because the winds were contrary, he got scared. He faced fear. He experienced fear. And what happens is that when we step out there and we get out there are those voices inside of our heads that say, who do you think you are? What do you think you're doing? As a matter of fact, it will have not only that voice in our head, but it oftentimes will be in the form of other people in our lives who will come up to us and say, well, you know, you're too old for that. Or you know nobody else has done that. Or you know there's a million people doing that. What makes you think you're special? Or how are you going to pay for that? Or all of those things that come, those thoughts that produce fear. And when it produces fear, it causes us to contract. It causes us to play small. And that's what Peter started to do. And as a result, he started to sink. But because Peter understood, and Peter standing for our faith, understood that as he was sinking, that there was a higher power available, Peter reached out to that higher power. He reached out to the law. He reached out to the energy, the one mind, the one presence, the one source that we talk about all the time. And he was able to be pulled back up in the midst of all of that. And what I'm saying here this morning is that when we set our intention, you remember that as long as Peter was focused on walking and moving toward the master teacher, or moving toward source, or moving toward the universal energy, he was fine. But then when he directed his attention to the contrary winds, that's when he started to sink. Because what the universe understands is where we direct our attention, where we direct our energy. That's why our theme for the month was about where I direct my energy, and attention is important. And we talked about that when those things align, I create a vortex of creative manifestation. So it's important for us to understand that when we set out to do things, when we set out to be things, when we set out to experience things, yes, we will experience fear. It's not about making the fear go away as it is managing ourselves in the presence and in the face of fear, and deciding that when fear crops up, that we recognize that we have resources. Now, this weekend, this Friday and Saturday, and they're still going on today, I participated in the Listen for a Change conversations, sacred conversations on racial justice. And there were a number of us that did that. We gathered together at St. Mary's Episcopal Church the last 2 days. We were people from all walks of life, different races and nationalities. I had the chance to be the opening speaker, but we had a wonderful opportunity there. And we discussed some hard stuff. And one of the videos, because a part of how the Institute works, we watched some video presentations, we had some live presentations and some panel discussions, but the one that closed things out was one by Brian Stevenson. And Brian Stevenson is an attorney, and he founded an institute that helps people, particularly who are on death row. And he also helps young people, teenagers and even preteens that have been convicted or who have life sentences or adult sentences been tried as adults, and he represents them. And Brian Stevenson told the story of a case in Alabama. Well, it was a black man that had been accused of murder. And they said that what happened is that in that town, when this white woman ended up being murdered, they were trying to find the suspect, and they had the leads were all leading to a dead end. And so finally, the sheriff just decided to pick this man out because he was having an affair with the white woman. He decided, well, you know, he's as good as anybody. So he was picked up and was put in jail. Now, when he got in jail, the people in the town started saying he couldn't be guilty of this because when all of this happened, he was at a church event and everybody saw him. He even got up and talked before the people. So at the time all of this happened, they knew that he was there. So he couldn't have been the one. But they took it to trial anyway. As a matter of fact, the prosecution had recommended life without parole, but the judge changed things so that he was going to receive the death penalty. And so he already, when they put him in jail, they automatically had already put him on death row, as a matter of fact. So Bryan Stevenson came into the case, and he said to the judge, he said, we've got all this evidence that the man was seen during the time all of this happened. He couldn't be guilty. And the judge was like, whatever, we're going to go ahead with the trial. So when Bryan Stevenson started getting the evidence, one of the things that he got incredibly was the police turned everything over to him, including when they were interrogating the key witness, because they said, we have a witness that places him there. They could hear on the tape the police coercing this man and telling him, if you don't say he did it, we're going to put you on death row too. But still, with all of that, they decided to go on with the case. And so Bryan Stevenson says that one of the things that he saw was that there was a very small group of black people in that town, and they were disheartened about what was going on. But he said the first day of the trial, they came to court anyway. And when they started to hear the evidence that he, as the defense attorney, was presenting, they started to gain some hope. Because, well, if all of this is the case, then they surely got to throw the charges out and everything. Surely they wouldn't convict this man. But what happened is they still decided, and what happened is that the mood in the courtroom by the people from the community was good, and they were feeling good. And then Bryan Stevenson said the next morning when he got to the court, all of the residents, the black residents, were standing outside the courtroom saying they won't let us in. So he said he went up to the door, and the guy said, you can't come in. And he said, I'm the defense attorney. I know I need to be in there. So they finally let him in. So he went and talked to the judge, and he told him, he said, you can't keep those people out. They have a right to be here. They're citizens. And the judge was like, well, that's not my problem. I don't have anything to do with that. So they developed a strategy so that the next day they were going to show up, and the judge agreed, well, I'll let them in tomorrow. So the next day when they got to court and they opened the doors of the courtroom to go in, inside of the courtroom was a metal detector. And just beyond that was a police officer standing there with a German Shepherd. Well, they had decided that there was going to be some people who had respect in the town. There was one older black woman, I'll call her Miss Smith. They decided Miss Smith would be the first person to go through the door. So Miss Smith walks through the door. She goes through the metal detector. And then when she gets to where the man is standing with the dog, she looks at the dog and she gets scared. And she says, I can't do this. And she turns around and she runs back out the courtroom. And so Bryan Stevenson is discouraged, other people are discouraged and all of that, but a few people go in, they go on with the trial. He says when he gets finished that day, and he goes out to his car, and Miss Smith is sitting out there waiting on him. And she said, I'm so sorry, I'm so very sorry. She said, I was fine until I saw that dog. And that dog reminded me of Selma, that day that we were on in Selma, and they let the dogs loose on us, and I was one of those people there that had to face the dogs, and it just brought back all those memories, and I'm sorry, but I talked to them, and they're going to give me another chance. And he said, well, Miss Smith, you don't have to do this. She said, no, I want to do this. I need to do this. So Bryan Stevenson said that when Miss Smith got in the car with her sister tells him the story later, that on the way home, she didn't say anything. She just sat there. When they got to the house and other family members tried to say something, she skipped dinner and everything, and she went to her bedroom and said that you could hear her in her bedroom praying. As a matter of fact, you could hear her praying all night. And then the next morning, when she got up, you could hear her saying, I ain't scared of that dog. I ain't scared of that dog. I am not scared of that dog. So when she got in the car, right into the courtroom, she was saying, I ain't scared of that dog. I ain't scared of that dog. When she got there to the court, Smith, they opened the doors, and she was saying out loud, "I ain't scared of that dog." She walked through the metal detector. She walked up to where the dog was, said, "I ain't scared of you." And she kept walking, and she sat down, and she had a seat right behind Brian Stevenson. And she said in a loud voice, "I'm here." And Brian Stevenson said, "I know, I see you, that's good." A few minutes later, she said, "I'm here." He said, "I understand this." And he said it was working with his paper. She said, "No, you don't understand. I'm here." And he said he started to finally get it. And this is my closing point. That in the face of fear, that in the face of those things that as we step out of the boat that would tell us and try to frighten us and scare us and pull us off course, that when we are able to call on that higher power and understand that higher power is with us, then our responsibility is to show up and to say, "I'm here." No matter what the circumstances might be, I'm here. No matter what it looks like, I'm here. What other people say doesn't matter because I'm here. And when you are saying, "I'm here," you are affirming you're in the present moment. You're here. That's where God is. That's where Spirit is. That's where all of that shows up. So my question to you this morning is, or my challenge to you is, get out of your boat, whatever it might be, and know just by showing up and declaring that I am here, that it all will come to you to be able to do what it is that you need to do. I'm here. I'm here. I am here. And so it is.
So it is.